Well, hello, everyone, wherever you happen to be today. I am Michael Hingson, and you are listening to or watching or both Unstoppable Mindset. Today, our guest is Ashley Rudolph, who is a coach. And I like something Ashley put in her bio that I thought was really interesting. And that is that Ashley's work is grounded in the belief that true transportation is not really about doing more, but rather it's doing things differently. And I'm going to want to learn about that. I think that's fascinating, and I also think it is correct. But we will definitely get to that and talk about that. Ashley approached me a little while ago and said, I'd like to explore coming on your podcast. And I said, well, sure. Except I told her the same thing that I tell everyone who comes on the podcast. There is one hard and fast rule you got to follow, and that is you got to have fun or you can't come on the podcast. So you got to have fun, Ashley. Just reminding you.
I'm ready. I am ready. I'm coming into the podcast today with all of my best jokes, all of my best tricks.
Oh, good. Well, we want to hear them all. Well,
Great.
Thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure to have you on Unstoppable Mindset.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I was just really taken by your entire background story, and I took a risk and sent you a message. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Well, I have always been of the opinion that everyone has stories to tell, and a lot of people just don't believe they do, but that's because they don't think about it. And so what I tell people who say that to me when we talk about them coming on the podcast, my job is to help bring out the stories. Now, you didn't say that, and I'm not surprised, but still a lot of people say that. And the reality is I believe everyone is more unstoppable than they think they are, and that they undersell themselves. They underrate what they are and what they can do.
Yeah. And honestly, I 100% agree with you. And that's why, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you triggered a thought. That's why I spend every single one of my first coaching meetings with a client, having them talk me through either their professional history or their wins from the past year. And in those conversations, my feedback is always, hey, you're not giving yourself enough credit for the things that you're doing. Like, these are amazing stories, or like repeating things back to them a little bit differently than they would have phrased it. But that's 100% accurate. We don't sell ourselves enough.
Even to ourselves, we don't sell ourselves enough, especially to ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little about kind of the early Ashley growing up and all that, and, where you came from and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So I grew up in New York. I'm from the Bronx. And yeah.
So was my mom.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea. Yeah. So I grew up in the Bronx and grew up with my mom. My dad was around too. And it's interesting. And I'm sure this will make sense, but I grew up going to Catholic schools from first grade to senior year of high school. And something about me was like, I was always a very self-assured, determined person, and that carried through all the way through my adulthood. And maybe that comes from me being a New Yorker. Maybe that comes from my mom being an immigrant. She's from the Caribbean. She's from the Bahamas, and she had a very high bar for what success looked like. I don't know where it comes from, but yeah. So that's a little bit about me growing up and kind of who I was as a kid.
So now where are you living now?
I am in New York again. So I moved back to New York in 2020.
Okay. Wow. Just in time for the pandemic. Lucky you.
I actually moved back to New York on Election Day in 2020. So I missed the early pandemic, but yeah.
I was in New York speaking on March 5th.
Wow.
And that night I got back to the hotel and my flight was supposed to go out at like 4:15 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I said, when I started hearing that they were talking about closing down the city, I think I better leave earlier. So I was on a 7:30 flight out the next day.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you just made it out
I did.
And at the time I was living in Boston, and I actually went on a vacation with a friend, and we flew back the day before they shut down the airports in Boston. So
Ooh,
that was
so
lucky. Yeah.
did you live in Boston itself or a suburb?
Yeah, I lived in Boston for 2 years, I think. Yeah.
I
I
lived
lived in the city. Yeah.
I lived in Winthrop for 3 years. So commuted
Oh,
across
great.
Boston to Cambridge every day
Yeah.
for a while.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I worked in Cambridge and I lived in the West End, right
Okay.
above TD Garden.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I hear that Durgan Park closed in near Faneuil Hall.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to admit, I didn't go there that much
Oh,
when I was living in Boston.
it was a fun place. It was a family
Yeah.
style thing,
Uh-huh.
and they had tables for four around the outer edges inside the restaurant, but you couldn't sit at one of those unless you had four people. And the serving staff was trained to be a little bit on the snotty side. And
Oh,
I
so they
went
made it
in.
fun. Yeah.
Absolutely, they made it fun. But I went in, and the hostess. There were three of us, and my guide dog at the time, Holland, who was a wonderful, cute golden retriever. And
Oh,
she said, "Oh, we're going to put you at one of the tables for four." And I said, "Well, okay, we appreciate that." And Holland was under the table. This
mhm.
waitress comes up and she says, "You're not supposed to be sitting here. This is a table for four, and there are only three of you." And I said,
Yeah.
"But they told us we could." "No, nobody told you you could sit here. You got to go back
Wow.
over to the big tables." And I said, "Look, we have a guide dog under the table, and he's
Yeah.
really happy. And they told us we could be here because of the dog." And she said, "I don't believe that at all. I'm going to go check. I don't believe you." She goes
Wow.
away and she comes back a little bit later. "No, you're not supposed to sit here." And I said, "Look, lift up the tablecloth and look under the table. I'm not going to fall for that. Just do it." She finally did. And there's Holland staring out with these
Yeah.
big brown eyes.
Oh,
And she
yeah.
just melted. And
Uh-huh.
she goes away and comes back. And one of the things about Durgan Park is they have big plates of prime rib. And
Yeah. Oh,
she
oh,
brought this
wow.
plate of
Okay.
prime rib. Somebody hadn't eaten it all. And she said, "Can I give this to the dog?" And so, normally I would say
Yeah.
no, but we were trying to make peace in our time. So I said, "Oh, sure."
Yeah.
And she and
Oh.
Holland had a great time. So it was fun.
Oh, and Holland got prime rib.
And Holland got prime rib.
What a treat. That is such a
And so
treat.
did the rest of us, but we had to pay
Yeah.
for ours. But I miss
Right.
Durgan Park. It was a fun place
Yeah.
to go, but I understand that it is closed, and I don't know whether it's reopened,
Oh.
but oh well.
Oh, that's
But
unfortunate.
Quincy
Yeah.
Market's a wonderful place to go. It's got a
Yes.
lot of
Yes, it
interesting
is.
things. So
Yeah, it's
you
fun. And
so you
Boston's
went through
beautiful.
high school in New York, went in the Bronx, tough neighborhood, and then
Mhm.
what did you do?
So I then went to college. So I went to Babson College, which is, well, it's in Massachusetts. It's in Wellesley. And it's actually
Okay.
right next door to Wellesley
Ah,
College. Yeah, yeah. So I went there and I studied business. And that was basically where I learned how to be successful in the workplace, which is kind of funny because I've found that over the years, a lot of people will say, I went to college, but by the end of it, maybe I didn't know what my transferable skills were, or I studied something that
hmm.
isn't related to what I was doing or what I did as a professional. And I always felt the opposite. Like in freshman year at Babson, they gave us $3,000 to like start a company as a bit as students. So all of us just had to start this company. We had our business ideas. There was a CEO, a CMO, a CFO. We had like rules assigned. And that was my first experience of what a workplace could be like, although it was with 18-year-olds. So maybe not totally reflective, but we had performance reviews. We had a head of HR. We had like company meetings. So we were doing things within a framework and they all kind of translated into the workplace, different players. So Babson basically kind of turned me into the business person that I am today.
Now, did each person get $3,000 and they started their own company?
Oh, no. So there were maybe 30 of us, and we
Okay.
started a company with that
With
$3,000.
$3,000. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh,
With that
cool.
investment, it was managed quite tightly. There's not a lot that you can do with $3,000.
No.
Right. So you can probably guess that a lot of the businesses turned out to be the same. So there was always a t-shirt company or a company that when the Live Strong wristbands were popular, then we were like, oh, let's customize these wristbands. So yeah, the company ideas basically ended up being the same because there's not that much that you could do with that seed
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only so much you can do unless you
Yeah.
start making a bunch of money.
Yeah. And in today's landscape, I guess there's more that you can do with digital products and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, we had to do physical, so we were pretty limited.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
still, if the company is successful, and was it successful?
Yeah, we did turn a profit, and then for all of the businesses that did turn a profit, you had to donate the profits to a local charity. So we did. We donated ours to a local organization. We threw an event in partnership with the organization. It was nice. So yeah,
Oh, cool. So how long did the company last essentially? Was it all 4 years?
it was the first year
Just
of
the first year.
freshman.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I have to say that I learned a lot.
Yeah, well, you're
Yeah.
kind of forced to or you don't succeed. So I was
Yeah.
going to ask you why you felt that you learned how to be successful, but now it's pretty
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah. So we started there in freshman year, and then sophomore, junior, and senior year was kind of more of a deep dive on specific skills. So then we
Hmm.
take our accounting classes, finance, marketing. If you were into retail, there was like a retail management class, the core classes. So we had, liberal arts courses. So
Hmm.
art, history, I think philosophy, things like that. But yeah, everything was mostly centered around business.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Did
Yeah.
you go do any graduate work anywhere?
It's funny. Yes, I did. So I graduated from Babson, and my first job was in a creative agency. And I was doing media buying. And at the time, it was 2008. And we were buying ads in school newspapers, which
Mm.
was dying. Right?
Yeah.
Like it was pretty much on its last leg. And I just had this thought when I was doing it, and that I wasn't inspired by the work because it wasn't growing, it was going away, and it was clear.
Yeah.
And actually, my first job, I got laid off
Mm.
because it was a dying industry and the team needed to be smaller. And at that point, it was my first job. So it was very devastating to me. I had never gone through anything like that before. So then I decided to go back to school. So
Ah.
I did my master's. I actually went back to Babson, but in an international program. So I spent my first semester in France, my second semester in China, and then my final semester at Babson.
Ah.
Yeah,
So why was the newspaper industry going away? Just because everything was going online?
exactly. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
things were shifting more digital. Yeah, it's exactly that.
So they didn't need as many people selling and doing other things as they did
Yeah,
before. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or companies were figuring out different ways to reach college students that wasn't dependent on getting in the school newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you got your master's degree from Babson, and then what did
Mhm.
you do?
I got my master's degree from Babson, and I'll fast forward a little bit because what's funny is that after I graduated, I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
but I figured it out.
Good.
So I ended up going back into marketing. But if you remember, what I described was in that first job, I wasn't connected to the mission, I wasn't
Hmm.
inspired by where the industry was going. So I ended up pivoting into nonprofits. And my first job after graduating from my master's was running digital media. So not physical media. So I shifted into social media and online marketing at a nonprofit.
Right.
So I was connected to the mission. I felt like the work that I was doing was for a good cause. And it was an industry that was new and that was growing and that was ever changing and exciting. So I did that for about 3 years. So first at a nonprofit and then at a charter school network that was in New York and New Jersey at the time, but has since expanded far beyond that. So yeah, I went into mission-driven work and I went into digital marketing and digital media. And I think what I took away from that chapter of my career was that I want to be in an industry that is ever evolving. So yeah, so after my experience in the nonprofit and education space, that's when I jumped into tech. So I jumped into tech after that and spent a decade in the tech industry. And obviously, tech is ever changing. I had access to so many different opportunities. I grew really fast. I started at the first tech company that I worked for. I was a program manager. And 5 years later, I was a vice president, right? So, like, I was able to seize opportunities and work really hard and get to the level that I wanted to get to. I was very ambitious. So I think tech just kind of gave me everything I wanted career-wise.
How did you progress so fast to go from being a program manager to the level of vice president in what generally would be defined as a pretty short time?
Yeah. So some of it was hard work. And I think the other factor was luck. And the other factor was going after whatever it was that was in front of me. So taking risks. So I would say with the hard work part, I worked a lot. So when I started that job, I was actually a program manager for back-end web development, which was Ruby on Rails coding, a coding language. And then I was also a program manager for data science. I had no experience in either. I was not technical. I did not have the technical skills or technical aptitude to do this, but I did have the desire to learn. So my first month at that job, I worked 7 days a week. I went to workshops on the weekend. I did coding workshops. I read through all of the documentation. I sat in all of the programs that I was managing. I just dug deep. And I think that first year of immersing myself in everything kind of set the foundation for me.
So you made yourself pretty technical by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, yes. And not on the level of any of my instructors or the students that actually took the programs, but I cared about learning and I cared about having a certain level of fluency in order to, I had to hire instructors for the program. So I couldn't fumble my words, right? So yeah. So I taught myself. Yeah.
You learned enough. You weren't trying to be the most technical person, but you learned enough to be able to interact with people and hold your own. Which is the important thing, I think. And for me, I know at one point I had a job that was phased out when Xerox bought the company, and I couldn't find another job. And it wasn't because of a lack of trying, and it wasn't because I didn't have the skills, but rather, as societal norms typically go, the belief is blind people can't work as opposed to what we really can and can't do. So I eventually started my own company selling computer-aided design systems. And for me as a blind person, of course, I'm not going to sit in front of a CAD computer or even a PC-based CAD system, which is what we sold. So I had to learn, however, all about how to operate the system, learn about PCs. So I learned how to build PCs. I learned about CAD, so I could actually walk someone through the process of drawing without
Yeah.
actually having to do it. So I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it
That's
was
exactly
important
it.
to do that.
Yeah, it was important. And no one told me to do that, right? And I'm
Mm-mm.
sure that no one told you to do that too. But there was just something in me that knew that I was excited about this work or I wanted opportunities. And this was the best way that I knew how to go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it is the way you do have to learn enough to be able to hold your own. But
Yeah.
I think it's also important in learning that you're also not trying to threaten anyone else. You're just trying to be able to communicate with them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All too often people view others as threats when they really shouldn't. But what do
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another
What are you
story.
going to
Yeah.
do? Right. Right.
Well, so for within 5 years, you became a vice president. What was the tech that y'all were really developing?
Yeah, great question. So, what's interesting about this is that it wasn't, so the first company I worked for wasn't a tech company and that they were building tech. It's actually a
Hmm.
coding boot camp. So, they were teaching people either how to code or how to become a UX designer or how to become a product manager. So, that was the product after a while. And I think long after I left the company, they did develop their own tech. So they developed an an LMS learning management system, and there was digital content. But when I started, it was really about the boot camp era and teaching people how to code because there were all these engineering jobs and web development jobs that were available and not enough talent to fill
Not
them.
enough talent to go around. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, which is when you think about today's market and where we are, that was only 10 years ago and it's a
Yeah.
completely different story. Now the market is flooded with too many web developers. Yeah.
It is. But I
Yeah.
would say, from my standpoint of seeing what they produce in terms of making web content accessible, not nearly enough of them know how to
Yeah.
do that, which is
Yeah.
another story.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Which is so interesting. And yeah, unacceptable, unfortunate, because there were always teams that were in charge of accessibility at the companies that I worked for, but then having someone be in charge of it and then properly resourcing
Hmm.
the accessibility team is a whole other story. And I think so many companies view it as just, oh, yeah, I checked the box. My website is accessible. But did you really build with your end users in mind? And the answer is probably no.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all too often that ended up being the case. Well,
Yeah.
so what did you do after you became vice president?
Yeah. So that was tough. you, you said it and you said I climbed really fast. And that's true. I did. And because I climbed fast, there were a lot of lessons to learn. So after I became vice president, I really had to own that leadership seat or that executive leadership seat and recognize that what had got me there is was not what was going to keep me there. So the thing that I did after I became a vice president was really understanding how to be an effective executive. So that means really understanding the business side, which I already knew. I had been doing that. I've been thinking about that since college. So that
Yeah.
wasn't something that I was concerned about. But the biggest thing was forming executive level relationships
Mhm.
and really understanding how to form allies and understanding that at that level, it's less of, I have the right answer and listen to me because I'm a vice president and more of a, okay, how am I influencing the people around me to listen to my idea, accept my idea, champion and support my idea? And it's not enough to just have something that's right on paper.
The other
And Yeah.
the other side of that, of course, could be
Yeah.
that maybe you have an idea that may or may not be the right idea, which also means you need
Yes.
to learn to listen.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that was absolutely the other side of it. So me coming into things and being like, I understand what needs to happen and not having all of the context either way. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you must have done pretty well at doing all that.
I figured it out eventually.
Yeah.
Yes. I did figure it out eventually. And it wasn't easy, but I was able to grow a team and scale a team. And I was able to move from maybe the business side of running operations to the product and technology side of it. So being able to see two different sides of the coin. And yeah, it did work well. I was able to um, create my own department, which was a project management office that oversaw all of the work of the entire product and design and technology teams, 250 people. I'm not sure that I would have thought I was capable of doing something like that and building something from the ground up and hiring a team of, I think, 15 people and leading that department. And yeah, yeah. And it was great. I did learn a lot. And then 2023 happened. And that was the major turning point in tech where I think the dominant story shifted from, or at least in education technology, which I think you know something, know lots
Mm-hmm.
about, but the dominant story shifted from this is great, this is growing, distance learning is fueling growth. There's so much opportunity here to it's too big. We need to, you know, do layoffs. We need to find a way to right size the business. There's actually not a lot of growth happening. So 2023 happened and I ended up getting laid off with
Mm.
my entire department that I built. And that was such a huge lesson, a huge leadership lesson for me, for sure. So I'll pause so that I'm not talking at you, but
No,
there's
that's
my
fine.
cliffhanger. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, so you got laid off. I've been there.
yeah,
I've had that
yeah,
happen. And
yeah,
it isn't fun, but
yeah.
it's like anything else. You may not have been able to control it happening, but
No,
you are
yeah,
the one who has to deal with it. So you
yeah.
may not have control over it happening, but you always have control over how you deal with what happened.
Yes, yes, yes.
And what did you do?
And that's exactly what was so different about this time. So I will say I had 2 months notice. I had an amazing leader as a chief
Wow.
technology officer. When the decision was made, he said, okay, we can make this decision, but I have to tell Ashley immediately. So he told me, and it wasn't surprising, right? Because I saw how what direction the business was going in. So I can't say I was shocked, but the big question that I had was, oh my God, what am I going to do about my
Hmm.
team? And I felt such immense responsibility because I had hired many of them. I came to care about them and their careers and their livelihoods. And yeah, I just felt responsible for it. So you said it beautifully in that it was about what I decided to do. So from that moment, I shifted my focus, maybe, maybe to my own detriment, but whatever. I came out on the other side, but I shifted my focus to my team. And I thought the best thing that I could do in that moment was preparing them for their next chapters without going directly to the team and damaging the trust of the chief
Hmm.
technology officer and saying, in 2 months, we're all going to get laid off. That's also not reflective of the type of leader I wanted to be. So I figured out that because we were a project management office and because there wasn't a lot of new work at the company, we had downtime. So I implemented a meeting on the calendar, which was a project review. And every single week, someone on my team had the opportunity to present their projects and talk about what they learned, what was challenging for them, and what their successes were, right? Some combination of those things. And they all did it. And that was my way of helping to start prepare them for the interview process, because now you know your work, you know what your impact was, and you've gotten my feedback as someone who is a leader who knows what hiring managers are looking for. You got my feedback on the best ways to present yourself. And they were able to ask questions. There were some people who approached me or the director on my team privately and asked us to review their resumes because they kind of saw the writings on the wall without me ever having to say it. And I did. And what ended up happening is at that 2-month mark or whenever, when the layoffs did happen, no one on my team was shocked. And there were people who actually, within a month after the layoff happened, they had found new jobs because they had that time to prepare and felt confident in their job search and the stories that they were telling about themselves. So all that to say that I did exactly that. I chose the type of leader that I wanted to be. And the thing that felt important to me was preparing my team for their next chapter.
Which I would say is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Because it
Exactly.
isn't, no matter what a lot of people might think, it isn't about you. It's about the team. It's about you
Yeah.
and the rest of the team, because you're
Yeah.
all a team.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yes. And I very much viewed my team as an extension of myself. I'm an extension of them. It wasn't just about them doing a job for me, quote unquote. Like, that's
Right.
not the type of leader that I am. We are a team. Yeah.
Right. So, meanwhile, while you were doing that and helping the team, what were you also doing for you?
And that's why I said, to my detriment, I didn't do a lot of thought.
Got
I
it.
put no thought into what I wanted to do
Okay.
at all. And you know what? It's not to my detriment. I think what I needed at that time was a distraction. And this was a really good distraction for me from sorting through what I wanted to do next, but also in navigating that with my team and supporting them through that. I think the answer became very clear once I was ready to ask my question. I just coached my team. Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so you sort of, as you would say, pivoted to being a coach.
Yes. And I want to be clear that this wasn't a decision that was like, that I just fell into coaching. You know, I I made the decision to. So I took some time to think about what were the pieces of my work that I really loved when I was a VP at multiple companies. And the answer was clear in that I really loved coaching and helping people become better at their work. And I really loved mentorship. And those were the parts of the work that, if I could just do that all day, that's what I would want to do. And I was like, well, I can make a decision to do that all day, every day now because I'm not doing anything. I just got laid off. So I can choose to do this work. So that's exactly how I ended up being a coach.
Well, so you never originally planned on being a coach. So was it that work with your team that really was the sort of pivotal decision for you, that although you never thought you were going to be a coach, that led you to coaching? Or was there something else that really helped
Yeah,
move you there?
there was something else.
Ah,
So,
okay.
yeah.
More
So
to the story.
there is always, you're peeling all the layers. So, so initially, what I thought I would do, because I was an operations person, I was like, I'll just be an operations consultant. I'll go out on my own and people will hire me to be their ops person. So let me, run with that as an idea. And I started having conversations with former colleagues. And what was funny in that, so many of their conversations were kind of like, oh, yeah, I want to support you. And that sounds nice. I understand why you would want to be an operations consultant, but there's something more interesting about you being a coach, or I want to hire you to be a coach for my team, or hey, you did really amazing things in your career. You should help other people do those things. And that was the theme that people kept telling me. So I finally decided to listen. And that's how I landed on coaching. And instead of it being like, oh my God, I'm trying to sell the value of myself as an operations consultant, once I just owned the coach title, people just started saying, okay, yep, sign me up, or I'll refer you to someone who needs a coach right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, you coach this one person on my team and they're great. Here's more. So it just became easy, and it became less of I'm trying to sell people and I'm trying to like convince them that they need me in this role. It was just easy.
So do you think you talked about being ambitious when you were in college and starting that business at Babson and so on? Do you think
Yeah.
you've always continued to try to be, if you will, ambitious, or did you sort of shift in terms of mindsets over time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think I have always been ambitious. And when I visited my mom last year or the year before last for Thanksgiving, I found a fake report card that I wrote myself, that I wrote for myself in fourth grade. And there was a prompt that said, what would you want your teacher to write on your report card at the end of this year? And I wrote, Ashley is excelling at excellence
Well,
in
there you go.
in fourth grade. So I think
So,
it's always been there,
so is
and
it,
it
but is it
probably won't ever go
ambition?
away.
Is it
Yeah.
ambition, or is it being industrious and
Ooh,
being
yeah.
confident? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that is such a good question, right? So there was a version of me when I was in the corporate world where I would have just said, yeah, it's ambition, right? Because I'm always motivated to, go after the next level. And that's what's driving me. And now that you put that question out there, it is, it is that confidence,
yeah,
because I'm not chasing a thing or the next level right
right,
now in this phase. I'm chasing quote unquote impact.
yeah,
Like the thing that drives me is helping people probably achieve things for themselves that they also didn't think that they could in their
yeah,
careers. And I'm just helping them get there.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why I asked the question, because
You're
ambition,
intuitive.
the way you normally would think of it,
Yeah.
can be construed as being negative, but clearly what
Yeah.
you're doing is different than that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
at the same time for you, now that you're coaching and so on, and you shifted to doing something different,
Yeah.
did you have to let something go to allow you to be open to deciding to be a coach?
Yeah. And the thing that I had to let go was exactly what you just pointed out. So you are very intuitive. So the thing I had to let go was that the traditional construct of what success looks like. So it looks like, okay, I'm a VP. So I next need to be an SVP. And then after that, I need to be at the C level. And
Mm-hmm.
no, and I guess there could have always been questions about, was that what I really wanted, or was it just the next level that I was after?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And there was that. I think it was just the next level for quite some time. But now, like I said, the thing that I let go of was that, and wanting to grasp for what the next level is. And now for me, it looks like, okay, well, I only have so many hours in the day, so I can't coach unlimited people, but I still want to impact many people. So, what does that mean? Okay, well, I'm writing a newsletter, and I put out a newsletter every week with my thoughts, and that can reach many more people than I can one to one. Or a podcast. I'm talking to you on this podcast, and maybe me sharing more of my story will inspire someone else, or I'll learn from you and your community, Michael. But yeah, I think the thing that determines what success looks like for me is my ability to impact.
And and the result of that is what happens with the people that you're working with. And so you do get feedback because of that.
Yes. Yes, I get lots of feedback, and it's transformational feedback. And I think one of the things that I love, and I do this for every client that I work with, is on day one, we establish a baseline, which I don't necessarily have to always say that to them, like we're establishing the baseline, it's understood. And then in our last session, I put a presentation together and I talked to them about where they were when we started and what they wanted for themselves. And over the course of us coaching together, what they were able to accomplish. So, what their wins were, and then where they land. And just me taking them on that journey every single, or when they work with me, is eye opening because they don't even see the change as it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, you did this. You're not that person that you walked into this room as on day one. And maybe by the end, you have a new job or you got promoted or you feel more confident and assured in your role. But whatever it is, you've changed and you should be proud of yourself for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, I am sure, pretty cool when you get to point that out to people and they realize it. They realize
Yeah.
how far they've come.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's really awesome to be able to share that with people and to also be on the journey with them. And when they think that maybe they're not ready to do something, just gently reminding them that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think about what managers have done for me because I had the privilege of working with really great managers, some in my career. And yeah, they did that to me. And that's how I was able to accomplish the things that I did. So yeah.
Well, and it's great that you're able to carry those lessons forward and help other people. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I hope that my clients can do the same. So if there are things that they learn in coaching, any frameworks or things like that, if they're able to help people, then that's great. And the cycle continues. So yeah. Yeah.
A question that comes to mind is that when we talk about leadership, there are certainly times that leaders face uncertainty, especially when there are transitions going on. And you've experienced a lot of transitions. What would you say is the unconventional truth about leadership in times of change and transition?
Yeah. So I think the thing that I see the most is that in times of transition, especially if it's a transition that maybe you have no control over, right? You're not choosing to leave your job, for example, the inclination is to over control, right? And try to assert control over the situation in any way that you can. And in more cases than not, that backfires to some degree. So the thing that I try to focus on with my clients is getting to a point where you accept the fact that what is happening. Kind of like my layoff, right? I didn't fight the decision or try to change the decision. I just had to accept it for what it was. And then the thing that we focus on is now that we know the thing is happening, whatever the transition or change is, it doesn't have to be as extreme as a layoff, but now that we know that it's happening, what can you control and what can you focus on? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we need to spend our time on. And it can be anything. Sometimes people are put on a performance improvement plan and you kind of just, if this is a situation where you're like, oh yeah, I could see where this came from and I wish that I was not in this situation. Okay, well, you kind of have to accept that you are. And what can you do about it
Yeah.
now is really, yeah.
What's the hardest lesson you've learned about leadership and being a leader, not just being an executive, but coaching
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. And I get this all the time as a coach too. It's in me, but the lesson that I've learned is I don't have to know everything. Right.
That's a hard lesson to
And
learn, isn't it?
it is. It is. Especially when you feel like as a leader, like people are relying on you, or you think they are. They're relying on you to know the answers or to know what to do next. Or as a coach, they're relying on you to ask the right questions or to guide them in the right direction, right? And sometimes you just don't know. And
Hmm.
that's okay. And it's also okay to say that. And
I
it
was
took
just going to say
me
that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It took me a long time to get comfortable with that. But now I am more comfortable with it for sure. Do you feel like you struggled with that too? Or yeah,
Well, I have, but
yeah.
I was blessed early on when I was a student teacher and getting my secondary teaching credential. I was a student teacher in an Algebra 1 class in high school. And one of the students came in one day and he asked a question in the course of the day. And it should have been a question I knew the answer to, but I didn't.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
when I realized I didn't, I also, and I guess this is my makeup, thought to myself, but I can't blow smoke about it. So I just said, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to look it up and I will bring you the answer tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
said, yeah. And my master teacher after class cornered me and he said, that was absolutely the best thing you could do, because if you try to psych out these kids and fake them out, they're going to see through you and you're never going to get their trust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and of course he
Exactly.
was absolutely right. So I did the right thing, but I also learned the value of doing the right thing. And Mr. Redmond, my master teacher, certainly put it in perspective. And I think that's so important. We don't have to necessarily have all the right answers. And even if we do have the right answer, the question is it our job to just say the right answer or try to guide people to get to the right answer?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's another leadership lesson, right? It's so much more powerful when people do get to the answers themselves. Yeah. And I think that kind of helps with them being less dependent on coming to you for the answers moving forward, right? If they're able to go on that path of discovery.
Well, and if they are able to do that and you encouraged it, they're going to sense it.
Yeah.
And when they get the right answer, they're going to be as high as a kite and they're going to come and tell
Yeah.
you that they did it. So it works
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. What do you do, or what are your thoughts about somebody who just comes to you and says, I'm stuck?
Ooh, that happens all the time, Michael.
Yeah, it does.
It happens all the time. And I'll tell you, there's two things. So if someone says I'm stuck, they either don't have the confidence to pursue the thing that they know they want to do, but they're just saying they're stuck, which is, it is being stuck, right? If you can't take action,
Hmm.
then you're stuck. But sometimes they frame that as, I don't know what I want to do or where I want to go. And then I ask a couple of questions and it's like, oh, well, you actually do know what you want to do and where you want to go. You just don't have the confidence yet to pursue that path.
Yeah.
So part of the time it's a confidence issue, or the other time, the thing that they're grappling with, or the other cases, what they're grappling with is I haven't connected with like my values or the things that motivate me or my strengths, even, right? So maybe they're the ambitious person who was compelled to just chase the next level and the next level and the next level. But now they're asking, is this really important to me? Or do I really want this? I spoke to another coach and she ended up leaving what she thought was a dream job at Google because every day she was kind of like, I just don't want to be here.
Mm.
And it wasn't her dream job. And she left to become a coach. So it's either one of those two things most times for the clients that I work with. And I ask a lot of questions. So I get to the answers, or I help them get to the answers by asking them the right questions.
Yeah, and that's the issue. And sometimes
Yeah.
you may not know the right question right off the bat, but by the same
Yeah.
token, you can search for it by
Yeah.
asking other questions.
Exactly. 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 Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
So what is a transformation of a client that you experienced, and kind of what really shifted that changed everything for them? Something that
Yeah.
just really gave you chills and was an aha kind of thing.
Yeah. Um, there are, there's so many. Okay. So one that I want to share is, and basically the client went from, this isn't the job for me. I don't like the role I'm in. I don't think I can be successful, and I don't think my work is valued here. And I would say over the course of 8 months, she went from that to getting one of few perfect performance reviews in the company. Like, it's a company that doesn't give a perfect performance review, right? So
Right.
going from that and being like, I need to find a new job, I've got to get out, to I am excelling at this job. And it wasn't just anyone that gave her the perfect performance review. It was one of the co-founders of the company. So, like, top person is saying, yeah, this is great. You're doing amazing work. There is value. And I think you're incredible. So in that transformation, the thing that she had to connect to or reconnect to was her values, and understanding what are the things that she enjoys about her work and what are the things that she really didn't enjoy, and understanding the why behind that. And then the other two things for her were developing her confidence, which sounds very fluffy because it's like, how do you help someone do that? And I help people do that by helping them feel really good about their work product. So
Mm-hmm.
with her, what we ended up doing was focusing on helping her prepare for some presentations, me giving her feedback on her decks, or her talking to me about how she wanted to prepare for a meeting and the points that she wanted to make, and me helping her, craft really compelling talking points, and having that feedback loop with me of being like, okay, here's how the meeting went, and this was the feedback I got. And also being like, oh, wow, the meeting went really well. And like feeling her confidence build over time by helping her get better at her work. And gradually over time, it just built to that amazing endpoint for her. But that's a transformation for me that will always stick out, because I just remember that first meeting and me just being like, okay, this might end up being a journey where we help her find a role that is better suited for her. And, just
Yeah.
kind of thinking about that. And it just didn't end up being that at all.
Well, the other thing that in one way or another probably plays into some of that is the people, her bosses, the people who she worked for,
Yeah.
probably sensed that something was going on.
Yeah.
And she had to be honest enough to deal with that. But as she progressed, they
Yeah.
had to sense the improvement, and that
Yes.
had to help a lot.
Yes, for sure. And I think maybe there was confusion from her boss and in him thinking that she was ready to take on the work that he knew that she could take on, but she didn't quite feel ready yet.
Yeah.
So there was something she had to sort through, and she finally, not finally, that wasn't a lot of time at all, but she got there. And yeah,
And I'll bet
it
they
was
were
great.
better. I'll bet they were better communicators with each other by the time it was all said and done too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They developed a shorthand,
Yeah.
and yeah. Yep.
So there are a lot of leaders who look great on paper, but when it really comes down to it, they just aren't really doing all that they ought to be doing. They feel restless or whatever. What's the real reason that they need to deal with to find momentum and move forward?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a different approach to answering this question. And because of the people that I work with, again, they're high achievers,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes I see that what happens is maybe people have described them as restless, or people have said, why aren't you happy? You have this amazing career. You should be happy. And I think like that projection, they end up taking that on and feeling guilty about the fact that they want more. But at the core of it, when I talk to them or get to the level of, hey, what is happening here? What's causing this sense of restlessness? Surprisingly, the answer is, yeah, I have this great job or this great title, but I feel like I could be doing so much more. So it's an
Mm,
impact.
mm,
It's an impact thing that is driving the people that I work with. Um, so what we end up doing is trying to figure out to some degree, like I have no control over what happens at work. So I don't want to pretend that I do. But if it is an impact question, then what we get to the core of is, okay, well, how do you increase your impact? And
mhm.
that's what I work with them on.
Well, here's a question. So I have been in sales for a long time. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, I still am. Being a
Mm-hmm.
public speaker, I sell more life and philosophy than anything else.
Yeah.
But one thing a lot of people face is rejection a lot. That was
Yeah.
redundant, but a lot of
Yeah.
people face rejection. How do you get people to understand that rejection isn't a bad thing and
Yeah.
that it actually is a sign of success more often than not? And I agree with it. And,
Yeah.
and you had given me this question. I think it's a
Yeah.
great question and relevant to answer.
Yeah. So I just try to flip the thinking. So I make it less about the person rejecting you or you receiving a rejection. And to me, if you get rejected, it's a signal that you tried. And that's what we focus on, right? So if you're not getting rejected and you're in the same place that you were, it's probably an indication that you're not trying or you're not taking big enough swings or you're not pushing yourself. So
Yeah.
I just try to help my clients, think about the fact that, hey, you got rejected because you tried and you put yourself out there, and that's great. And then the other thing I like to think about with rejection is really just like rejection is someone placing a bet.
Hmm.
And if you know about bets, you know that they're not 100% right. And sometimes the person just decided they weren't going to place their bet on you. And it's not that you're not capable, or it's not that it wasn't a great idea. Maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe whatever. You don't know what the why is, but it's just a bet. And someone could take a different bet and it can be on you, or you can bet on yourself, even. Right. So once you start to think about rejection as just a choice that someone made on a day, and that person isn't all people, and they're certainly not representative of, the person who could decide to take a chance on you and your idea or your initiative, then I think the rejection stings a lot less.
Yeah. One of the expressions I've heard regularly is the selling really begins, and I think whether it's selling a product or whatever you're doing, but the selling really begins when the objections begin or the
Yeah,
rejection.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
there's so much truth to that.
there
One of the
is.
things one of the things that I used to do when I was selling products is I would play a game with myself. Is this person going to give me a new objection or a new reason for rejection that I haven't heard before? And I always loved it when somebody came up with something that truly I hadn't heard before and that was absolutely relevant to bring up,
Yeah,
because then it's my
that's
job
cool.
to go off and deal with that. But it was fun to put my own mindset in that sort of framework, because it's
Yeah,
all about, it's not me unless I really am screwing up. It's other things. And no matter whether
yes,
it's me screwing up or not, it's
yeah,
my job to figure out how to deal with whatever the other person has on their mind.
yeah.
And when the new things come up, those are so much fun to deal with. And I even praised people. I've never heard that one before. That's really good. Let's talk about it.
So great. Yeah, yeah. They were probably like, oh, Okay. Wow. Well, yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't show fear and didn't need to
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I I went into a learning mode. I want to learn what's on their mind and what's going on.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's about understanding what's important to the other person or
Hmm.
understanding their concerns. And I think if you come at it like you did from a place of really wanting to understand them and find common ground, then sometimes you can even shift the rejection, right?
Well,
In that
often
moment.
if you do it
Yeah.
right, often you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can reverse it because most rejections and objections are really based on perception and not necessarily reality at all,
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
which is important. Well, if you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, what moment would you choose and what would you say that they should learn?
Oh, this is such a great
It is a
question to
fun
think about.
question. Yeah.
Um, if I could go back, I would probably tell myself that um, you you don't necessarily have to run away to find the things that you're looking for in your career, right? And I think in life too, sometimes you think, oh, I just have to move to a different city, or I just have to buy a new outfit, or
Yeah.
I have to change this thing. And sometimes you just don't have to. Sometimes you can have a conversation about the thing that you want or the thing that you're not getting. So if this is a boss, right, talking about the thing that you want or that you're not getting and coming up with a solution together. And I think for quite some time, I was too afraid to do that. And if I wasn't getting what I needed or what I wanted, I just thought the best thing to do was to find it elsewhere. And I would just go back and tell myself to ask for what I wanted first and then get the information and then leave if I had to. But leaving doesn't have to be the default.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Okay.
Ashley, this has been a lot of fun. We've been doing this an hour. Can you believe it?
We have. The time flew by.
It's fun.
Yeah, I could have kept going.
Well, then we'll just have to do another one.
Yeah, we do. I will always come back. You are amazing, Michael.
Well, this has been fun. And maybe one of the things that you could do to help spread the word about what you do and so on is do your own podcast.
Yes, yes, I
Something else to
can.
think about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great idea. And then if I do, then I will invite you on there.
I'd love it. I'll come.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again, and I want to thank all of you for listening and watching today. This has been very enjoyable and a lot of fun, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. So Accessibe is spelled Accessibe. So Michael, Michaelhi at accessibe.com. Or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And Michael Hingson is michaelhingson.com/podcast. Love to hear from you. And certainly, I hope that wherever you're listening or watching, give us a 5-star rating. We value your reviews and we really want to know that we're doing good by you. So please give us good reviews. And if you have thoughts or things that you want us to know about, don't hesitate to reach out. And for all of you, and Ashley, including you, if you know of other people who ought to be guests on our podcast, it's so much fun to meet more people from those who have been on before. But for anyone, if you know someone who ought to be a guest, please let me know, reach out, and we will honor your interest and we will bring them on because I think everyone has, as I told Ashley earlier, stories to tell. So hope that you will do that and that we'll get to see you on our next episode. And again, Ashley, I just want to thank you for being here. This has been so much fun.
All right. Thank you, Michael.